Hey guys, what's going on? 5869 casting, and this is going to be the first replay I'm going to go through. This is kind of a series, I guess you could say, that I want to start, where I just kind of go over people's replays, give them an idea of what they did right, what they did wrong, stuff like that. So I'm going to be doing, the first and second one are going to be for Drewbie. The first and second, I imagine, will probably be the worst out of all of them, so I'm going to do two for him. And after that, hopefully I'll be a little bit better at, controlling the speed. And we'll be running through them. So spoiler alert, the Radiant is ahead for like a majority of this game. But then they go on to lose it after being like 2 racks up. So pretty awful. It is kind of a team thing, but I will try and point out what Drewbie could have done a little bit better here. So first off, he does grab Skeleton Walk just for the bounty rune. Really don't agree with that. I don't think it's that worth it just to get the bounty rune. It's only 100 gold and 100 EXP. We'll see if he misses any CS in lane, but realistically, if he misses any CS because he can't use searing arrows, then it's not worth it. You should have just scaled searing arrows and taken that lane CS here. So the biggest thing is that I'm not going to try and point out and say, hey, you missed that CS, even though he hit that one. I'm not going to say, hey, you missed that CS, because just general CS and stuff like that is kind of going to be something that you get better at by playing Dota. So I'm not really going to point that out. The item build, not too bad. He's got a little bit of regen here. Doesn't need too much. He's against the Tidehunter in the safe lane over here. This Windrunner kind of doing her own thing, as well as the Prophet in the jungle. So he doesn't have to worry about too much here. It looks like he is going for the Wraith Band first. In my opinion, I think just grabbing the Basilius before the Wraith Band is a little bit better here, just because it gives you the mana, so you don't really have to worry about spamming your searing arrows that much. It's only like 10 mana, sure, but just the bonus regen's always better, and helping you out there. And so he's doing a pretty good job just controlling the lane, CSing a little bit here. Not really denying his creeps at about like half HP to keep the lane closer here. So I'm not sure. I think the Tidehunter dies here. Maybe not. So no, the Tidehunter gets away. Maybe if he was further down here, the Tide dies. So maybe just watching the creep equilibrium a little bit more important. He goes for an Aquila first here. Which I don't mind. It kind of depends on your lane whether or not to go Aquila first. I think sometimes you have to go, like Basilius boots, then finish the Aquila. In this case, I'm okay with it just because the mana regen's pretty nice. As well as, I'm not sure if this is intentional or not, but he does leave the Aquila on, which normally you don't want to do because it's going to be pushing the lane. It's giving your creeps an extra 2 armor here, so they're always going to be pushing. They're going to be a lot stronger. He does leave it on, but he also pushes down this tower very early on, which I don't know if it was intentional or he just said, wow, I'm close to this tower and whatever. But he does push it down, so that works out quite nice for him. The biggest kind of mistake, in my opinion here, is that he grabs the Glove of Haste because he's going to be going for a Midas here. And although he does get a lot of early farm and he gets an early tower, he also gets an early kill on the Tidehunter. As well, I believe the Tidehunter like spends Ravage here. Still gets the tower. So he gets the tower. It's pretty early. I think he gets the Midas at like 7 something, which really isn't that early of a Midas. And if you look at the other team, they've got a Shadow Fiend and an Anti-Mage. So luckily enough, the Midas wasn't a huge thing. But his itemization in this game isn't the greatest that it could be here. So he grabs the Midas, and the reason why it's not that great is, sure, levels are pretty good on Clinkz. You can get Dark Pact and all your stuff leveled up, whatever. But other than that, the however much gold, 250 or whatever it is, 2050 gold, I think, could have been spent a lot better somewhere else, like getting an earlier Orchid to pressure the Anti-Mage more, because he still does get his items despite being so far behind. Getting an early Orchid to pressure the Anti-Mage, although both the Prophet and the Windrunner go for an Orchid here. Maybe if you communicate that, you don't have to get an Orchid. But just generally getting items to gank a little bit more. He stays in his lane here, and does end up killing the Tidehunter, CSing pretty well here, as well as getting the tier 2 tower. which is actually pretty important here. Anytime you're against an anti-mage and you can limit a lane's worth of towers, that's actually pretty huge, just because he really needs those to TP around and to try to be as efficient as possible. So now if he wants to go to the bot lane or to the Ancients, he has to TP all the way to his tier 3 at home, which as an anti-mage player, like, really sucks. You just want to be jumping around the map as fast as possible. So here we go. He's still just CSing, running around, doesn't die there. Not doing too bad. Grabs a DD. Let's see how much money's on this Tidehunter. So 14. So this is not questionable in my opinion, because it does work out, but I don't know if it's that necessary. I think maybe look around a little bit. He probably could have killed the Tidehunter, but he gives this Tidehunter about 400 gold off of that kill. And it could have been more, but he does actually get it split there. So I guess a creep killed him or something like that. But if the Tidehunter would have killed him, it would have been an earlier dagger or blink dagger by about a minute, which could have led to like a lost team fight. And if it did, that would have been really unfortunate for his team there. And it's something like that you don't notice when you die. You say, oh, I got the Shadow Fiend, that's kind of worth, but not really, because Shadow Fiend's got a lot of ways that he can catch up farming here. It looks like he's going to kill the Tidehunter here. No, just barely misses it yet again, so it doesn't get him, unfortunately. Tidehunter grabs his blink, but yeah, you killed the Shadow Fiend, but I mean, you've been farming a lot harder, so trading that, like, you're way further ahead than he is, and now he's actually ahead of you, so just barely getting ahead of you recently. Although you will get this tower, so probably going to even it out a little bit there. So yeah, now you're ahead by quite a bit, but he's got comeback mechanisms in Shadow Fiend. That kill wasn't, like, you know, really too worth it for you because you died. So we'll see. He's kind of in his jungle here. This is what I don't agree with kind of more than anything here. So he goes in his jungle, gives the Shadow Fiend the free reign of the tower here, and he doesn't really get much from his jungle. He gets 2 creep camps. Meanwhile, the map is pretty safe for all these heroes. The anti-mage is in his jungle, just farming very low. If he was somewhere around here, probably could have gotten a kill there. The Lion, pretty much a sitting duck at this point, since you can blow him up. Maybe he can stun and hex you, but either way, he's gonna have to return home. And as a support, you kind of want to be out as much as you can. And it looks like they lose a fight top lane as well. So he's kind of just in his jungle right now, not really doing much. He's working towards his Orchid, so yeah, he is farming it up. But as Clinkz, you should either be like really pressuring towers or really pressuring heroes, especially when you're against a Shadow Fiend and an Anti-Mage who are much better flash farmers than you. It really doesn't matter how many creeps you hit, because it's not going to be as many as they will when you know it comes to the end of it. So they do take some nice team fights. He goes mid, hanging out around mid. I don't mind this. This is pretty good. The one good thing about a Midas on Clinkz, I'll just slow it down real quick here, is that you're off the map a lot, and it means that you'll at the very least be able to make up for that CS and that EXP by having that Midas. So it could have been worse. This fight goes on. They do win this fight, just barely, I think. They get the Ravage, and they've got the mech, and thankfully this Prophet went mech, which is good for him. But they do win this fight. Drewbie has to turn around a bit. Dark packs that creep and starts going on again. So they're still going. They pressure this tower. And they're way ahead right now. And realistically, they do pressure this tower really well, but they could have easily taken a Roshan there. I think if they looked at it, they probably would have said, hey, we can't get this tower. But they could have finished Rosh. They know Ravage is down. They know the Anti-Mage wouldn't have been up in time. You've got a Prophet with mech and Treants to tank. And then you've got, Searing Arrows and all that stuff. So he's going to finish his Orchid around 22 minutes here, which is not a bad timing. It's a little bit later. Usually if you're going for an Orchid, you want to get it around like 15-ish minutes just to make it like as effective as possible. The Windrunner gets yours at the same time. And I do like this positioning right here from Drewbie. Usually as the Clinkz, you don't want to be up here like kind of face tanking with the rest of your team, because you are very squishy, and if you're controlled, that's going to be pretty much the end of your game. So he gets it on the back here. Accidentally targets the Centaur, which is a little bit unfortunate, but he gets it on the back, and he starts dealing whatever damage he can here. So they do trade a 2-for-1 here. They go for the tower yet again, and they should probably back here. They do get the racks though, I believe. So they do get the racks, and then they keep going. Now 100% they should back, but they don't. They keep going. Drewbie does get a little bit greedy. The ranged racks, not worth it. 9 times out of 10. realistically, the range creep does absolutely nothing. If you've got the melee racks, this lane's already going to push really, really hard. And they lose every hero there. So they get a bit aggressive here. It's kind of a team thing. But really, especially this early on, the game's not over by 1 racks, especially with an anti-mage and a shadow fiend, like I've been saying. So if you can get that melee racks, just get out. There's no reason to stay and keep diving or try to get that range racks, whatever. But, I mean, that's not the biggest deal. They're still really far ahead. They're like 8,000 net worth there. I think they make it all the way up to about 14,000 net worth advantage. But so Drewbie goes top again, doing a pretty good job here. Now he starts to pressure this tower, so this is good. Gets a kill on the lion, moves into the jungle for a bit. Probably should have just gotten that tower last hit. But still pressuring the top lane here. Pressuring the top tower. Doing a good job. This is good as well. You can split push as Clinkz. It's still really, really effective. So there's nothing wrong with that. Anti-mage is split pushing as well. But as of right now, because he's pretty far ahead of the AM, he'll definitely split push a lot harder. The only issue is that this anti-mage has no manta, and since you've got that orchid, this is the perfect time to be ganking this anti-mage right now. So you may think it's hard because he's got blink, but with skeleton walk, it's actually pretty easy. So just TPing here and skeleton walking, maybe he sees you on the map. I honestly highly doubt that he's paying attention to the map. I think this is probably, if I had to make a guess, he's got 188 last hit, so he's not doing too bad. This is probably around 2.5, 2.8k, somewhere around there potentially. So he's probably not watching the map, but he does get this tower just about. Yeah, there it is. So he gets the tower. Is he going to get the racks? Looks like he will. So he does get the racks at the very least, which is good. The team already starts GGing out. Now they're 2 racks down. And this is kind of when it all starts going downhill. So the thing I do want to talk about, that I'll probably talk about in a lot of games, is that it's not always going to be you that doesn't play the best here. Obviously, sometimes your team will make mistakes, stuff like that. But it's important that you can't really blame it on your team. You have to kind of take charge. You have to tell your team what you guys should be doing. And there's a couple things. So the first thing is that they should have done Roche probably a long time ago, probably 5 minutes ago, because they have so much map control right now. You just need to throw a ward up like right here, and if you don't see them in their lanes, you know they're smoked up and maybe coming for you at Roche, because they should be pressuring them out. You've got a jungle ward here, or no, that's the other teams actually, but if you had any wards, like they have very, very defensive wards right now, which again isn't his fault, but you should be telling your team, guys, put these wards aggressively. We don't have to worry about them being on our side of the river. We really have to like worry about where they are so we can get these pickoffs and stuff. So they should be grabbing Roche, and they should probably be smoking up and finding these pickoffs. The Shadow Fiend looks like he just finished his BKB now, but they could have picked him off probably a couple times before. He's got the Yule Scepter, which is good. And now the Anti-Mage has his Manta. So they've got the BKB, they've got the Manta. And now there's really not a lot of control that the Radiant has for the Dire anymore. The Anti-Mage is going to kill Drewbie here. He didn't expect him to have his Manta, which is pretty big. So that's unfortunate. Another thing is that Drewbie is going to go for the MKB, but it's not going to be useful whatsoever. So he's going for the MKB. He's up against a Shadow Fiend and an AM, sure. There's nothing wrong with an MKB if they've got a Butterfly. You don't really want to buy the MKB just as a damage item, especially when you've got an Orchid that doesn't really provide you much, because it doesn't give you much. Sure, it gives you 88 damage and like 15 attack speed, but the attack speed is really not that necessary, and the damage is negligible when you compare it to something like a Daedalus, which would have done a lot more, or like a Desolator and you save the rest for, you know, a crit stick. So you've got like a Deso and pretty much a crit stick off just that MKB money. So another big mistake here is that the Radiant doesn't really fight together. And again, it's not his fault, but he should, and you should, whoever's playing, you should really try and rally your team. He goes right clicks that illusion there. G ends up getting a kill on this, yeah, on right there. So he's killed quite a few heroes now. Does die, but they should all just be running right now. Drewbie goes in, gets hexed immediately. The Lion 4-staffs up, and he's just in kind of a bad position right now. They do end up killing him. They've got the dust. They do end up killing him as well. So there's no reason that the Bristle and the Clinkz should have gone in there. The fight was already over. They already lost the Sand King and the Windrunner. The Nature's Prophet was pretty much dead. And even if your team goes in there, even if the Bristleback goes in there, just turn around and run. You're probably going to get shit on because they're going to say, oh, where were you? Like, we could have won that fight, whatever. But You have to recognize these things. You are a Clinkz. You are super farmed by 30 minutes, honestly. But you're still very susceptible to all this the CC that they've got. And the Lion has a ton of it. He's got the Hex. He's got the Stun. They've got the Slow over here from the Enchantress. And they've got the Dust. So, I mean, if you've got Skeleton Walk on cooldown maybe and they don't have Dust, it's not that scary. But it is a major reason why the graphs start turning. So yeah, there they are. They're 14k, and they're already starting to go downhill. Sure, they're 2 racks up, but that doesn't mean anything. They go for Roshan now. The Dire gives it up for free. They probably could have contested this. They're a little bit worried about top lane. I don't think they realize what's happening here. Sand King almost goes down there, and they are going to get it. And they're going to give it to Drewbie. So that's not bad, but still no BKB, and no tank, like no Scotty, nothing like that. He can easily die twice. As long as the other teams plays it like somewhat competently, which unfortunately they don't, so it's not going to teach him a lesson. But he does almost die a second time here. So there it is, the first time he goes down, and he honestly should have died a second time here, considering there's 5 heroes here, but they have no dust. They have no dust, they have no sentry, no gem, and he just skeleton walks away. So a huge blunder from the other team is the only reason why that Aegis wasn't a complete waste. And it would have been a complete waste. The 200 gold from Roshan is pretty much nothing for you guys. Like, yeah, sure, it's a nice little gold boost, but the Aegis is what you're there for, and the Aegis is what you need to break high ground. So now they've got no Aegis, and the lanes aren't pushing in, so the Dire can just kind of sit here at the bot lane, and the Radiant kind of shouldn't go for this, but they do. And there's one thing right here that should really show them to get out. So they missed the stun right away on the Tidehunter. That's it. You got to get out. You got to wait for that stun to come back online. And you got to restart your fight here, because already he's taking some damage. The Shadow Fiend BKB is off to the side. Kind of a poor BKB on his part. But they're ready to fight. So he blinks in, goes for the Requiem, gets it off. And that's it. They should all be running right now. Everybody get out. Your Skeleton King's at half HP. You're not hitting as hard as you could because you got hit by the Requiem, which I'm not sure if people know that mechanic, but you do hit far less damage, 50% damage reduction after you're hit by Requiem, so you should usually back after Requiem unless you're way ahead. Channels the epicenter, and then they all turn around. So Shadow Fiend is able to really delay his death here thanks to the Yule Scepter, and now we've got 4 very low heroes and 1 that's fairly tanky, and this team fight is going to go so poorly. They've got the Ravage, the Anti-Mage blinks in, and there you go. That's about a 5-man, 4-man Ravage there. Drewbie goes down, Coke goes down. They do get a buyback from the Shadow Fiend at the very least, but they lose 5 heroes in doing so. So a huge 5-man team wipe. They don't have to worry about their lanes just yet. The creeps are just kind of tinking at their towers here, but that's not a big deal. And it's just going worse and worse for them now. So they should have recognized at that point that they need a Roshan, or they need a fantastic fight to win it. If they were checking the items, they know they've got a Refresher Orb on the Tidehunter now. Doesn't actually have the mana pool to use it, oddly enough. Unless he bought something that I didn't notice, but doesn't have the mana pool to use it just yet. It's about 900 to like a little over 1,000 mana, I think. They do get a kill over here on the Anti-Mage. No idea what he was doing. Just kind of wasting his time. The Shadow Fiend and the Lion both get out, so nice little bit for them. But they don't smoke up. They don't have aggressive wards. And honestly, if you're a Clinkz with 4.2k, I think they've got wards. Yeah, just buy the wards. Like, honestly, if you put a ward in their jungle and it nets you a kill, it's already paid for itself. So there's no reason not to purchase the ward there. It's, you know, a lot of people think, you know, like, I'm not the support, I shouldn't have to buy wards. It's not always true, especially when you're really far ahead. Like, just put the ward up, whatever. If it nets you a kill, whatever, that's fantastic. It's already paid for itself. If it doesn't net you a kill, it at least nets you some vision. So if you put the ward up here, which somebody does, and you see there's nobody there, you know they're in their base. You know there's nobody bot lane because the creep wave's pushing out. So you can kind of smoke up, and you can wait, like maybe around here, wait for somebody to come up. The Shadow Fiend maybe to push the lane out, jump on him. He's got a BKB, but you could probably blow him up still because Searing Arrows does go through BKB. You know they shouldn't have a Ravage. I know they should at this point, I guess. But then they just start hitting the towers, and this is when it gets really iffy because everybody just thinks they're super farmed. The team fights are in a very awkward position. Drewbie's hitting the tower. Sand King's way behind. Can't really do much yet. And we get, what, a 4 or 5 man Ravage from this Tidehunter. So a beautifully positioned Ravage from the Tidehunter. Refreshes, doesn't have the mana. Probably realizes, oh shit, wasn't paying attention. Does get the wand mana though. And Ravages a second time. So nice little Ravage there. Drewbie does BKB the second one, but the rest of his team is pretty much screwed at this point. They're all pretty well dead. Anti-Mage is going to jump in. He's going to ult him. Probably shouldn't have done that because he had tons of mana still, but it doesn't matter because he kills him anyways. Drewbie gets a kill over there on the Tidehunter, but that really does not matter whatsoever. Sand King goes in to try and use his ulti. Doesn't get anything with it. He's going to go down as well. And now it's just Drewbie alive. He's getting pinged out. His team's probably saying, hey man, what the heck's going on? Probably could have Orchided since he BKB'd before the second Ravage, but he was probably just hammering his BKB, so it's no problem. Now he's just running around. The Roche respawn timer in about 2 minutes if they're paying attention to that. There's an Ancient Stack there the Anti-Mage gets, so now he's getting super farmed. The graph is probably looking absolutely awful now. Yeah, there you go. It's dropping more and more. And he does finally get the BKB on Drewbie, so it is a good pickup for him. And he is still hitting quite hard, so it's not that big of a deal. He has to be Dark Pact, of course, but or Death Pact, but we'll see. I think they kill the Lion here. So they do kill the Lion here, which is pretty good. And then they lose this team fight again. So they overextend a little bit. We'll kind of rewind that, take another look at it. So he's sitting in the back, which is good. I don't think he actually popped his BKB. It just looks that way because replays suck. But the Anti-Mage blinks in, and so does the Shadow Fiend, and they kind of overchase this Lion, because they should see right here, nobody top lane, nobody bot lane, the whole team's got to be there. They know they've lost the last 3 team fights, I believe, and even if they're not paying attention to when the ultis are off cooldown, they should still know that they'll probably just lose the team fight, because this Anti-Mage is already doing so much more damage than really anybody else on the team. So he goes up against Drewbie. Drewbie does have his BKB. Doesn't matter because Anti-Mage has a basher and just bashes him through. Drewbie turns around there. Got out. Not sure why he turns around, but it's not a big deal. Turns around yet again. So he turns around, gets ravaged, assumes he's fine, and then he goes on to try and kill the Enchantress here. So gets bashed there. A very close call. Luckily enough, gets out, turns around, eats the ravage. Now the Sand King's dead. The Bristleback's probably going to die very soon. This Prophet's at half HP. He's got the mechanism, does use it, but it really doesn't matter because now you've got the Enchantress coming back in, the Anti-Mage coming back in, and he just runs up. He can die easily. Everybody underestimates this damage from Enchantress, but his pure damage, it takes like 1 or 2 right clicks before Drewbie goes down. He runs away, but it doesn't matter. The right click's already landing. He's going to go down. G's going to turn around, probably kill Coke here. It looks like Coke's going to go down, and this is pretty much the end of it. Yeah, you kill the Tidehunter, but guess what? The 2 cores are still alive. They're absolutely bodying your team now, and there's not much you can do about it. Your 2 racks up, doesn't matter. They're continuously pushing it out here. Anti-Mage getting more and more farm. They do get this Roshan, I believe. No, they actually give it up because they're a little bit afraid here. Anti-Mage has his no Vlads. Looks like he gets a kill over there on the Prophet. Trying to split push. Actually, the Enchantress gets the kill, but he definitely helped. Now he's got 6.1k. That's enough for the heart. They're still fighting, lose another 2 heroes. There's not really much more to say about it. Drewbie trying to split push, but he dies, tries to get away, and they've got a gem on the Enchantress, so they do just barely see him, I believe. Yeah, they do. They just barely catch him with the Anti-Mage there, and unfortunately, not really the right place at the right time. Probably should have just continued running up and around, because they would go around this way, I imagine, but does get caught out there. You know, it says, why would you look there? Because they found you. Unfortunately, they saw you as they walked by. Just barely saw you. Blink on the Enchantress, a little bit odd, but it doesn't matter because now they're so far ahead. And just like that, they lose about a 14k gold lead, and now they're behind. Drewbie does a really, really careless TP here. The Sand King's kind of up front. They should know they've got the gem. They should have seen it when Drewbie died bot lane, but nobody's really paying attention. And you should really be clicking on the items of the enemy team. So that's a little bit unfortunate there. We'll take a look at Drewbie's perspective here. He's going to TP in. Really, you should have canceled it. You see him die, cancel it. That's it. There's 4 players there. all you've got is the bristleback. You get ravaged instantly. That's it. That's pretty much game. He's going to go down. Just respawned. He's got buyback. He's going to use it. And that's pretty much it. Now that he bought back, he's got no item progression. Looks like he's going for a satanic, but that's not going to help him much. Gonna just move around in the enemy jungle. Not bad. Looking for the anti-mage again. He's gonna get caught out and he's dead after his buyback. So that's pretty much it. That's game. No buyback. It still goes on a lot longer, but realistically, the enemy team's so much further ahead that there's really nothing more they can do here. So mistakes from the whole team. But the thing is that you've got to take charge. You've got to point out these objectives. You got to remember, Dota is an objective-based game. It's not just a hero brawler. You can't just keep throwing yourself at the racks. And usually when you're ahead and you lose one fight, that should really signal you to say, oh shit, we're not as far ahead anymore as we think we are. They just got a lot of key items now. They've got the BKB on the SF, the Manta on the AM. You have to look at your own lineup, say, how can we control them? Sand King can't do anything against the SF. Anti-Mage is really tanking against the magical damage now. So what are we going to do about this? You should be taking Roshan. You should be telling your team, to take Roshan with you. You should be telling your team to get the aggressive wards. If not, buy the aggressive wards yourself. You should be asking your team to buy smokes. If not, do it yourself. You're this far ahead. There's no reason you should not. The itemization, unfortunately, was a little bit off. You were far enough ahead that it didn't make a big difference. But had you have been more even, this MKB would have been kind of a wasted item here. And it really ends up kind of still being a wasted item. But it certainly could have been worse. The anti-mage just kind of runs in here. I think he dies, actually. The ravage is there. There's the refresh. Anti-mage still alive, so he doesn't die. And again, they're not really paying attention. You should be saying, like, you see, yeah, just one Shadow Fiend, but all the lanes are empty here. Like, you should really know that nobody's going to be anywhere else other than right in front of you when they're all missing here. So, a little bit unfortunate. This Prophet TP's back to try and save the day, but can't really do much. They just get racks. Then, yeah, late game, bro. So, Drewbie says, I won this game. Unfortunately, the whole team did do pretty well that game. Your score wasn't bad whatsoever. 4-10. Honestly, I thought it was a lot better than that, but alright. So 4-10 could have been better. Itemization was a little bit off, as well as the decision making. You got to be a little bit careful with your positioning, especially when you're a squishy carry like a Clinkz who dies that quickly. I have no idea. Okay. So just a little bit poor positioning, a little bit poor item decision. I think like probably a Scotty would have been really solid this game. Really tank you up here. I think a Daedalus would have been a really nice item as well. The MKB again, like now it would be good, but at this point, if the anti-mage is going to get farmed enough to have a butterfly, as well as the Shadow Fiend, the game's probably going to be over at that point because you're really not going to out-carry the two of them. They're both really strong late game carries. Clinkz can be a strong late game carry, but he has to be like really far ahead, which you were, but you weren't far enough. You guys lost a couple team fights, and unfortunately that was about it. So not much more to say about that. 3 things to take away from it. I'd say I'm sure you're a great player, so try just captaining the team a little bit more. Watch your positioning when you're playing a squishy hero like Clinkz, as well as maybe go over your itemization a little bit more. Understand why you should get an item, why not. They've got a lot of control here between the Lion and the Ravage, so you probably should have gotten the BKB a little bit earlier. Maybe just gotten like a Crystallis and then the BKB. You didn't have to get the full Daedalus, but that'll give you some nice DPS early on, as well as the BKB to ensure that you can't get controlled, because you do die a couple times just from being hexed up or ravaged up, which is unfortunate. You did a good job in your lane. You split push pressure towers, so that's a good thing. But you also didn't really pressure the enemy all too much. You didn't make much use of that Orchid while you had time. So you had time to use the Orchid while the Anti-Mage didn't have his Manta. But unfortunately, you don't really make any use of that. The Anti-Mage gets his Manta, he gets the rest of his items, and that was pretty much the end of it there. So a great game from both teams. They do end up coming back from about a 14k deficit, and they swing it back in, my lord, about a 40k deficit. 30K, I guess. That's not something I've seen in a while, and unfortunately, they do go on to lose the game. So, very frustrating loss. I understand. Hopefully, I wasn't too hard on you this game. You did play well. Obviously, it was a team effort, which it will always be. But thanks for sending this one in. I'm going to be moving on to the Shadow Fiend one right away. And stay tuned, guys. I've got a lot more of these coming. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to check out some of my other videos. I have my series From Lane to Lane where I just cast some everyday pubs that you guys send me. I also do some more professional pubs like games from Koikva, Miracle, whoever I can get my hands on from Dodobuff. I have a learning series as well, so feel free to check that out. There's some more info in the description as well as some videos linked in the annotations at the end here. Thanks a lot.